Hey, ready to hop back on the train? We've officially passed the halfway point of Alien Stage, only 3 episodes left right now, plus I'd say a few comics and some extra content. We're getting dangerously close to the end, and honestly, as our hearts are buzzing with anticipation for better or worse, let's dive back in. And finally, the final round, round 7, kicks off. With a pretty, I'd say, surprising vibe. We were expecting something more melancholic, more angsty for a final, and instead we get this upbeat track that makes you want to move, like full-on, I'd say, karaoke energy. But Till isn't here to have fun, and honestly he has every reason to be worried considering that the sheer presence of his opponent, the seemingly unbeatable Luka, is right here. He's laid back, almost quite arrogant. His attitude sharply, I'd say, contrasts with Till, who's fired up, but clearly mentally drained. And yeah, the events of the previous round really shook him. He didn't even have time to recover before jumping straight into the final, because yep, these 2 rounds happened back to back. And that makes a lot. That said, you can feel that he's pulled himself together. His outfit leans more rock, his gaze is sharper, you can tell that he's ready to fight. Ivan's sacrifice wasn't in vain because Till seems to have regained some of that rebellious and dynamic energy. But will it be enough to take down the favorite? Not so sure. Either way, Till has nothing left to lose. Well, except of course his own life. So he goes all out on stage. His bold and almost raw voice pulls us right in. And everything in his body language screams that he wants to survive, that he'll fight until the very end. Flashy colors burst across the screen, his arms moving wildly. It's honestly, I'd say, really satisfying to see a more confident Till again, reminiscent of what he was like in round 2. Meanwhile, Luka keeps leaning into his really provocative style, his smooth voice just as mesmerizing. But there's something really interesting going on, something you might not catch on a first listen. It's that he's mimicking Ivan's singing style and even his gestures. So, to be clear, and just to describe it, Ivan's voice is very controlled, it's very composed, almost restrained. But it is paired with that hypnotic gaze and that constant frozen smile. It gives him this very distinct charm. And Luka is very clearly imitating those traits. His eyes are slightly downcast, his movements soft and almost sensual. His voice is syrupy but dipping into lower tones. So it creates this really unique musical contrast, and honestly, okay, so musical, in terms of like just pure music, the result is an absolute banger. Basically, Luka has clearly studied his opponent's emotional weak points just like he did with Mizi before. But while all of this is happening on stage, a completely different battle is unfolding behind the scenes. So we find Hyuna and Mizi, who've managed to infiltrate the security system, except that, unlucky as ever, while forcing their way past the guards, Hyuna got shot in the side and is now seriously injured. But our queen doesn't back down, she keeps pushing forward, determined to see their mission through, interrupt the competition and launch a rocket carrying a message of hope. So from what we understand, and honestly, information about this project in itself is pretty scarce, so I'm going just to go full on speculation. But the goal of the rebellion is to reach Earth, where humans might still be alive, to either ask for help or establish some kind of connection. It's a crucial plan for the rebellion, one Hyuna inherited from Isaac's brother Jacob, a key figure in the movement, and failure is not an option for Hyuna. This plan has to succeed. But to make that happen, they first need to hack in the competition system, and that's no easy task. As Hyuna struggles between the intense pain of her wound and the weight of her mission, Mizi anxiously watches the performance unfold. Seeing Til's distressed yet determined face brings back a painful fear. She might lose someone close to her again. And tired of standing still, tired of doing nothing, Mizi decides to act. She moves toward the stage, toward her childhood friend. But Hyuna stops her, shooting her a look that says it all. Don't be stupid, it's way too dangerous. And that's where the relationship starts to shift into something more tense, more conflicted. You can already feel that their principles are clashing. Hyuna is cautious, she's strategic, she's willing to make necessary sacrifices. But Mizi can't stand that mindset. She'd rather give everything in the moment, consequences be damned. And she makes that very clear, pulling away from Hyuna's grip and rushing toward the stage, while Hyuna slams her fist against the table, frustrated and disappointed in herself for failing to protect Mizi. I really love how much Hyuna's character is conveyed through her gaze and her eyes. It's incredibly expressive, always telling a sort of different story. That's probably why we so often see her wearing sunglasses, for example, because despite appearances, her gaze gives her away. It reveals her weakness and her contradictions. So Mizi charges onto the stage, breaking through security in a pretty stylish way, right in the middle of the performance. But meanwhile, the competition is still in full swing. Luka keeps toying with Til, his voice almost mocking him, while Til keeps pushing himself further, reaching higher and higher notes. Time is running out, every second matters. The lyrics themselves hammer it in. The clock goes tick-tock, tick-tock. Luka seems to be urging Til to give up, asserting his dominance like he always does before delivering his final blow. So he steps closer to Til, closing the distance he had carefully maintained until now, and gently caresses his face, almost romantically. He leans in toward his ear, maybe even whispers something to him, who knows. Then his hands move to Til's neck, his fingers brushing against his lips. Everything about it echoes Ivan's death, the trauma of the previous round. And this specific gesture completely throws Til off. He recalls abruptly, and he's completely disrupted by this movement. He still keeps going and he still sings anyway. And that almost desperate energy makes Luka laugh because, as always, he's completely at ease on stage despite the deadly rules of the game. He's sort of enjoying himself, laughing in the face of his opponents, so used to coming out on top to crushing everyone else. The emotional distance, this lack of empathy, it's a defining trait of his character so far. And at this point, he doesn't even feel human. Naturally, our sympathy leans toward Til. Sure, he's overwhelmed by his emotions, but unlike Luka, he doesn't rely on those manipulative tactics. He's overflowing with feelings, with sensitivity, and that makes him so much warmer, so much more compelling to watch, and above all, so much easier to relate to. But very quickly, he can't even muster the strength to grab his holographic guitar anymore. Blood starts dripping from his nose, his gaze grows hollow, and the flashbacks come floating back. Ivan's final look before collapsing to the ground. The sheer absurdity, if I may call it so, of the situation starts to overwhelm Til. What is he even doing on that stage? Why is he singing? Why did Ivan die anyway? Why did he kiss him so suddenly? What did it all mean? Is any of this even real, or is it just some kind of nightmare? Til completely spirals, and Ivan's presence practically breaks through the screen. Still just as unreadable as ever, looming over him, dominating him. Even in death, Til never managed to understand him. He never figured out what Ivan truly thought of him. It is like a slow-acting poison, something that takes time to spread, dragging you into a drawn-out agony. And those images of Ivan are deeply unsettling. We see him holding himself, tears running down on his face. And according to Vivi Meng, Ivan never cries. Never, except when he feels loved. So what does that mean here? Is it a reflection of Till's guilt as he begins to realize just how lonely his friend really was? Or is it Ivan in a way trying to comfort himself because even after his death, Till still can't understand how he truly felt about him? Probably a bit of both, but one thing is certain, Ivan's presence is haunting Till to the point where he starts hallucinating him. Right as Luka approaches and lifts his chin as if to assert himself as the victor, except that Luka didn't really get that close. In the very next shot, he's still standing at a distance. It's maybe all in Till's head, his mind completely breaking down until somehow his eyes lock onto Mizi, hidden beneath a hood in the crowd, and yet he sees her. And people still have the nerve to say that he wasn't really in love with her, anyway. In that instant, hope flickers back to life in Till's eyes. His face lights up, and so does Mizi's. Two childhood friends who thought they'd never see each other again, who believed that they were doomed, now reunited, if only for a moment. At that point, Till may have even stopped singing altogether, completely absorbed by her presence. Just knowing that she's alive, that he can reach her, is enough to consume him, to make him smile again. He moves toward her as if nothing else in the world matters anymore. But at the very last second, just as Till seems to come back to life, it's taken away from him. There was never much chance that he'd survive against the undisputed favorite Luka, and yet in that moment you kind of refuse to believe that Till is gone. Till is overflowing with life, with innocence. He's the one who deserves to keep living the most, and still he's cut down without a second thought. As he collapses, Mizi catches him, cradling him in her lap, tears in her eyes, completely shattered. Everyone she tries to protect slips away from her. And then a flashback begins. And honestly, it's my favorite sequence of the entire episode. Mizi and Till are hiding from the surveillance robots, pressed close together to avoid getting caught and punished. They have to stay quiet. But Till is completely flustered. He's red as a tomato. He can't even bring himself to touch her. She means too much to him. The idea of any kind of contact almost scares him. Meanwhile, Mizi doesn't really hesitate. She leans closer, smiling warmly at her friends, even laughing in the middle of such a stressful situation. Because this is what Mizi is for Till. Even when everything is falling apart, Mizi shines and she still smiles. And Till can't help but admire her, even in his final moments. A soft xylophone plays in the background, incidentally a gift from Ivan himself. It's a gentle melody that accompanies Till as he dies, a proof that in a way Ivan is still right there beside him. As Till breathes his last, Hyuna steps onto the stage, now overtaken by the rebellion. She's crouched, weakened by her injury, right in front of a wide-eyed Luka, who suddenly finds himself face to face with the greatest victory gift he could have been given. At this moment, Luka's face is completely unrecognizable. He's trembling, his heart racing, a deep flush spreading across his cheeks. That cold, untouchable star persona vanishes, replaced by the wide-eyed wonder of a child. Yes, at this moment, he really looks like a child. A Morse code signal starts playing, literally spelling out alive. Proof that Luka has never felt more alive than he does in Hyuna's presence. But Hyuna doesn't seem to share that same joy. She lowers her gaze, visibly shaken, as her comrades help dress her in preparation for the rebellion's plan. Still, Luka can't take his eyes off her. Even when a gun is literally pointed straight at his temple, nothing else really matters anymore. So why does he react like this to Hyuna? In my previous video, I briefly mentioned Luka's obsession with Hyuna, but let's dig a little deeper. Luka was designed as a trophy, From the moment he was born, he existed in multiple copies. He had clones, stored away so that his fame could be almost immortal. He was never meant to be a person, a human being. He's a machine, a project, an idealized figure of beauty created to shine on stage and make money for his owner, Heperu. In this scene, we see him standing among the bloated bodies of his own clones, his hand hovering over a button. He probably tried to free them and ended up killing them all by accident. Even his own existence has always been a mystery to him. Something abstract, something that he's never had control over. He likely doesn't even know why he exists or what his purpose is. He just follows orders mechanically, and that's entirely intentional. To win a ruthless competition like this, you have to be stripped of emotional attachments because they're seen as weaknesses. That's probably why Luka was deliberately isolated, given little to no real education, never taught how to interact with others. He's like a feeble child completely unadapted to the world, except when he's on stage. And that's where Hyuna comes in, her and her brother Hyunwoo. They're the only ones who ever approached Luka while everyone else kept their distance. In one moment, we see her counting his fingers or helping him do it, because for Luka, Hyuna is a sort of emotional compass. Beyond any romantic attachment, she's also a maternal figure, someone who gives him the basic kind of love he's always been denied. She doesn't hesitate to get close to him, to care for him, and to show him warmth. And naturally, Luka becomes completely attached and dependent to her. It makes perfect sense if you think about it. She's the only person who's ever been that gentle, that sweet with him, that physically affectionate with him. So of course he seeks her out, he tries to recharge in her presence. It's a bit like Ivan with Till, like the way he expresses it's not exactly conventional, but much more uninhibited, much more childlike, because Ivan at least had some understanding of boundaries. Luka, on the other hand, never learned them at all. As time goes on, they become inseparable, but Hyunwoo doesn't really see it that way at all. He's jealous that this kid who he actually gets pretty along with is clinging to his sister and taking up all of her attention. So they argue a lot actually, and one day it goes too far. The conflict escalates without Luka ever truly understanding the gravity of what he's done, the fact that he killed Hyunwoo. And Hyuna, who understands him better than anyone, is left to carry that weight. She stays by his side even as hatred boils inside her. It's a mess of conflicting emotions because she knows what he is. He's a child raised in violence, someone who has no real awareness of his actions, who sees human life as replaceable, and who can only perpetuate that same violence in an endless cycle. Meanwhile, Hyuna herself has never managed to move on from her brother's death. Ever since she escaped an act garden and the contest, she's been fighting constantly just to cope with that trauma. So when she sees Luka again, her reaction makes perfect sense. She drowns herself in alcohol, in games, in laughter that barely masked the weight she's carrying. When she escaped, she lost a leg, her body dragging itself through the wreckage, while images of Luka shining on stage played over and over in her mind. She experiences freedom painfully, while Luka is still trapped in that slaughterhouse, doomed to remain there forever. And honestly, that idea might haunt her even more than losing her brother. The fact that she couldn't even save him, just like she couldn't save Luka. Her brother's death is almost symbolized by the loss of her leg. Even with a prosthetic one, she'll never be the same again. And yet, Hyuna still carries the role of the protective older sister, of the leader, the one she's always been, even though deep down her own childhood is still haunting her. As Mizi breaks down in tears, Hyuna tries to comfort her, but you can tell that she struggles to find the right words. Because as Mizi herself points out, Hyuna is running away from her own feelings. And this plan, with such slim chances of success, might just be her way of coping with the reality that humanity can't seem to break free from its conditions as slaves. But Can we really blame Hyuna for this? What was she supposed to do? Just sink into her suffering without even trying to escape, no matter how small the odds? The episode then shifts into quieter and almost mundane slice of life. Ivan eating his meal in silence from his future opponent, a reminder that deep down they're all the same. Mizi and Sua getting dressed, Till covering his clothes in graffiti, and then back to the past with Luka clinging to Hyuna, pressing himself against her as she quietly sobs near Hyuna's grave. He holds onto her to survive, but the very pillar that she needed to survive is already gone. And Hyuna says it herself. She never really recovered from her brother's death. She plays the role of the protective older sister, kind and selfless, but in the end, she has no one to save her. Especially when she knows that Luka loves her more than he even loves himself. You can see it in the way he looks at her or how he literally leans in to kiss her wanted posters when he's alone in his room. Hyuna is a source of love for him, a healing elixir for a young man crushed by pressure, exploited since birth, and burdened with health issues. While Hyuna's design radiates warmth, her scenes filled with vibrant, warm colors, Luka in contrast appears pale and lifeless, except when his cheeks flush red at the sight of the one he loves. But Hyuna's gaze grows colder. She fought to gain her freedom, but it's not enough for her. Luka embodies all her fears and, above all of her regrets. He represents everything that is wrong with the system, the exploitation of humans by aliens in its purest form. He's a being created for appearances, yet the only thing he truly sees is her, and as long as he keeps looking at her, she won't be able to move on. She may save as many children as she can, but as long as Luka remains trapped in that prison, she has failed. And because he is unreachable, she chooses to look away. Despite her laid-back attitude, Luka is, in fact, her one and only weakness. In the end, in another universe, what would their lives look like? Far from constraints with less trauma, what would that freedom look like? Breaking away from the dull and muted colors the episode had accustomed us to, a cinematic sequence answers that question in the most bittersweet way possible. Each of them would have been able to explore their full potential. Ivan would have been able to smile naturally. Till would have followed his artistic instincts. Mizi and Sua would have built connection with others and freed themselves from their codependency. And Luka and Hyuna would have shared a genuine love, embracing their imperfections. An interesting detail that I read on Pinterest is that Luka wears glasses in this version. I read somewhere that in another universe, he's finally allowed to be imperfect, to have physical flaws, because he's no longer under the control of aliens. But beyond this comforting alternate universe, these children are still capable of radiating warmth and authenticity, even in their current world. We see them singing together, laughing, enjoying life. This human connection are their true strength, something that even centuries of alien domination cannot erase. Because as long as we connect with one another, we can create beauty ourselves. This entire episode is kind of an ode to childhood, and its title, Vige, which translates to cradle, reflects that perfectly. Deep down, these characters are still innocent children who never had the chance to grow up, and Hyuna and Luka's relationship illustrates this tragically. Luka never had the proper environment to develop and mature in a healthy way. Hyuna, meanwhile, remains chained to her childhood even after joining the rebellion, because no matter the regrets and hatred tied to her past, despite the resentment she feels toward Luka, When he gets close to her, it awakens an almost maternal instinct. She sees in him a fragile child she feels compelled to protect, no matter the cost, even if it means sacrificing her own life. In that moment, her legs moved on their own, and I don't think that Hyuna really planned her death. Her body, I think, simply reacted before her mind could process what was happening. She sensed that Luka was in danger, and she acted instinctively. Now, yes, Hyuna's death is really poorly handled, if you want my opinion, especially in execution rather than in the intent itself. Why would a random person shoot her by accident? Like, did they panic? Why does no one react? It feels like the creators, Vivi Manga, tried something but didn't really think it through. And that's frustrating, especially since the previous deaths were handled so well. It almost feels ridiculous in comparison. That said, I understand the intention. Hyuna gives her life for Luka so that he can finally understand the value of human life, so that he can experience loss and regain his humanity. Because for that to happen, he had to lose the person most precious to him. But before dying, Hyuna asks him to live with love, to keep searching for it even in the impossible. In a way, she repeats to him what she once told herself. You must keep living even if the person who gave your life meaning is no longer there. Only then you can begin to grow. Well, the next episode will officially be the last, and I have finally covered all of Alien Stage. I'm counting on you to be there. See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.